Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Israel has thwarted a major terrorist attack on the Egyptian border. Last week, at least 35 terrorists ambushed an Egyptian motorcade with RPGs and missiles, killing 16 Egyptian soldiers and wounding 7. The terrorists commandeered an armored personnel carrier and a military truck loaded with explosives and headed for the Israeli border. They fired tank shells at Israeli troops and attempted to penetrate the border. The terrorist reportedly came within 2 kilometers of an Israeli town before the Israeli Air Force destroyed the APC, killing 4 terrorists. The IDF released photographs of the weapons arsenal carried by the terrorist, which included suicide bomb vests, numerous automatic rifles, and ammunition. The Army official said, had the terrorists succeeded, the attack would have been very severe. A major disaster was averted. Erin Viner has more on the story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu toured the site and met with IDF soldiers involved in preventing the Sinai attack. The Prime Minister praised the military and the Israeli Security Agency for foiling what could have been a major terror attack while expressing his regret over the deaths of the Egyptian soldiers. He added that while it is clear that Israel and Egypt have a common interest in maintaining a quiet border, it has been made clear on numerous occasions that when it comes to the security of the citizens of Israel, the state of Israel must rely only on itself. No one, said Netanyahu, can fulfill that role other than the IDF and the security services of the state of Israel, and this is how we will continue to act.
Anti-Israel propaganda has run rampant in Egypt after the Sinai attacks. The Muslim Brotherhood has publicly accused Israel of the ambush, which killed 16 Egyptian soldiers. Dozens of Egyptians protested outside the residence of the Israeli ambassador to Cairo, demanding that Egypt terminate the peace treaty with Israel. The Hamas Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh said that the method of the attack confirms some sort of Israeli involvement aiming to achieve political and security goals, to cause tension on the border with Egypt, and to destroy joint efforts to end the Gaza blockade.
Despite the rejection by the International Olympic Committee of the request to hold an official minute of silence for the 11 Israeli athletes murdered at the Munich Games 40 years ago, a ceremony was held for the slain Olympians last week. The service was attended by Israel's Olympic delegation, family members of the victims, and British Prime Minister David Cameron, who spoke at the event. During his speech, Cameron said that as the world came together in London to celebrate the Games, it was right to stop and remember the 11 Israeli athletes who so tragically lost their lives during a crime that the world must never forget.
Fatah is running a children's camp in Jericho which implements the principles of the Third Reich. According to Palestinian Media Watch, the camp uses indoctrination to brainwash young Palestinian children, just as the Nazis did with the Hitler Youth Movement. The camp, which is located outside the Jewish community of Itamar, the site of one of the most gruesome terrorist murders in Israel's history, teaches that martyrdom is a beautiful thing and that nothing could be better than going to paradise. The children's camp is named after a terrorist who masterminded one of the most deadly suicide bombings carried out in Israel. It gives Arab youngsters trading cards featuring terrorist and suicide bombers. The children are taught that there is no option other than jihad and that to make peace with the enemy, Israel, is a fate worse than death.
In his first foreign affairs advertising campaign, U.S. Republican presidential hopeful Mitt Romney blasted President Barack Obama for his policy on Israel. Romney criticized Obama for failing to visit the Jewish state in his official capacity as President of the United States, as well as his refusal to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, such as Romney himself declared during his own visit to the Jewish state earlier this month. During his speech in Jerusalem, Governor Romney stressed that Israel and the United States are bound together by the shared values of freedom and justice.
New York's top bank regulator, the Department of Financial Services, has threatened to strip the banking license of a major UK bank accused of aiding Iran. DFS claims that Standard Chartered Bank conspired with the Iranian government to hide more than 60,000 transactions, which generated hundreds of millions of dollars for the hardline Islamic Republic over the last 10 years. In a statement, DFS said that by concealing the source of the transactions from law enforcement, Standard Chartered Bank exposed the U.S. banking system to terrorist and other corrupt states. According to the New York bank regulator, the loss of a New York banking license would devastate the foreign bank's ability to operate in the international market.
The Bloomberg agency has reported that the sanctions against Iran have cost the Islamic Republic at least $133 million in lost oil revenues each day. Tehran's oil exports have plummeted by more than 52%, or some 1.2 million barrels a day. Nevertheless, while the economic sanctions have made an impact on the Iranian economy, the nuclear program has not been hindered by the heightened sanctions against its banks and oil exports. According to a recent statement from Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, Iran has now enriched enough uranium to produce 5 atomic bombs.
The Romanian Jewish community is upset over the appointment of Dan Sova to the Romanian parliament. Sova stated last year that no Jews suffered on Romanian territory during the Second World War. He said that only 24 Jews had died as a result of the Lassi pogrom, which claimed the lives of more than 15,000 Romanian Jews. He was dismissed from his position as spokesman of the Social Democratic Party after the comments and was publicly accused of being a Holocaust denier. Members of the Romanian parliament said Sova is unsuitable for the job and that they are considering holding a protest of his appointment to parliament.
Syria's prime minister has officially defected to Jordan. Riyad Hijab fled with his family, denouncing what he called the murderous terrorist regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, saying that he would now join the Holy Revolution against the regime. In a statement to Al Jazeera, Hijab said that his defection was planned for more than 2 months and that it was carried out to direct a blow at the Syrian regime from within. 3 other government ministers from Assad's cabinet are also reported to have defected along with Hijab.
According to a report by the Bloomberg news agency, Israel has enough natural gas to last at least 1.5 centuries. The report states that exploration companies have discovered enough natural gas off the coast of Haifa to supply Israel's domestic needs for 150 years or more. The report said that according to today's trade rate in the United Kingdom, the gas would be worth about $240 billion. That's equal to Israel's total annual output.
The Scientists magazine has rated Hebrew University of Jerusalem as one of the world's 2 best universities to work at outside of the United States, and it was also ranked as the 9th best university to work at worldwide. Hebrew University President Menachem Ben Sasson said that the honor demonstrates that a pleasant working environment can also be the source of outstanding academic achievements, and that it is because of the sense of partnership and responsibility shared by the entire staff that Hebrew University has consistently been considered as a leading institution of higher education. Ben Sasson offered his congratulations to each of his colleagues upon the recognition of their achievements from both Israel and the international community.
The Jerusalem municipality has announced plans to build an 80 million shekel aquarium at the Biblical Zoo. This will be Israel's largest aquarium, holding up to 2 million cubic meters of seawater. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat said the enormous underwater park will be a unique experience and attraction for visitors, tourists, and researchers from Israel and around the world. The aquarium, which is expected to open in the year 2015, will be built on a 6,000 square meter campus next to the Biblical Zoo. It will house sharks, stingrays, sea turtles, and coral reefs. There will be exhibits dedicated to the seas surrounding Israel, and it will focus on Israel's natural marine habitats in order to encourage conservation and the study of Israel's rapidly diminishing marine life.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. Our guest today is Eli Piepsch, the director of I Vote Israel. Eli, thank you for being on the show.
Josh, thank you for having me.
Eli, tell our viewers a little bit about what is I Vote Israel.
Well, I Vote Israel is a national campaign here in Israel to try to get American citizens to vote in the upcoming U.S. elections. And frankly, this is very important for expats all over the world, not just in Israel, but they all should be trying to vote when they go to the polls in their various countries. They should be going and thinking about Israel when they go to the polls. One of the major issues that we've been coming across in our campaign is that there are some Americans here who figure they've lived in America, now they live in Israel. Their focus is exclusively on Israel and to the exclusion of everything else. And that is a very problematic concept because, as we know, certainly when it comes to America, so much American policy has a very, very direct impact on Americans in Israel. One of the common refrains that we've had is that for an American citizen who lives in New York, the President of the United States will probably have a more dramatic and more acute impact on the lives of an American who lived in New York and now makes their home in Israel.
Eli, how many people are we talking about here? Like, how many votes? Will the fact that Americans who now live in Israel voting in the American election, will it really affect anything?
Josh, it's a great question, and there's two ways I want to address that if I can. The first is let's look at history. In 2000, obviously, the most contested election that America ever had, with the election between Vice President Al Gore and Governor George Bush in 2000, came down to just 537 votes in Florida. As you can imagine, Florida is a state where there are many thousands of Jews who live here. Yet at the end of it all, any idea how many Americans, how many Floridians voted from Israel? The number was only 64. And if a few thousand Americans had taken their right to vote and to participate in the elections, either they could have turned the tables and Al Gore could have been president, or they could have voted in much heavier numbers for Governor Bush, and the election would not have been nearly as contested as it was for a few months thereby after the election. But that's only one example, and no one knows how close a given election can be. The other, and I would say the primary push of our campaign, is to demonstrate that there are a significant amount more Americans voting in 2012 than voted in 2008. The reason why that's consequential is that over the course of a campaign, influentials, elected officials are always looking for indications, some real data where they could determine what is the mood of the electorate, what is happening. And if we could demonstrate that a significant amount, twice, three times as many Americans are voting in 2012 than 2008, what does that mean? It means that Americans in Israel feel impacted, feel defensive, feel vulnerable by a lot of the issues that the president or the administration or the U.S. government was having an impact on Israel, and therefore they're responding by voting. And if politicians and people who make decisions when it comes to campaigns hear about this before the campaign is over, and this information will become available in September, about 2 months before the election, that will have a very significant impact, and not just on those influentials. It'll have an impact on the Jewish community in America, in the greater pro-Israel community in America, and it could have a much more significant impact than an extra 30 or 40,000 votes coming from Israel.
Some will say, and it's widely accepted, that President Obama is one of the most critical presidents to Israel in the history of the American presidency. Yet 80% of Jews voted for Obama in the last election. Can't you argue that more Jews voting in Israel would not necessarily advance the rights of Israel when it comes to the American politics?
I think an argument can be made, but I think that it's a slightly flawed argument. One of the things is, and our campaign does not get involved in supporting a particular candidate or particular party. I can tell you what we have heard is the amount of Americans here in Israel who said, I've never voted in 30 or 40 years that I've lived in Israel, but this year I want to get involved, I need a vote, it's important. They're volunteering on our campaign, spending many hours, they're communicating with friends and family back in the States. So I say from that end, that's a direct response that we're hearing. But even more so, a lot of the Americans, the Jews in America who voted in 2008, voted before they knew what Obama was going to do. Now that they've seen it, they have a different understanding, and I think that they will be reacting potentially differently.
Eli, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewers?
Josh, thank you so much. The message for your viewers is that Israel needs and requires and relies on the support of our international friends and family. And the people watching the show, I would consider you not just friends, but family. We need you in many ways, connecting with people in your community, but also when you have a chance to impact public policy, take the opportunities to do so. Keep Israel in mind, and with that, God will bless hopefully all of us and keep Israel safe and strong.
Thank you, Eli, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
I was 16 and a half. I and my friends in my village, a group of 17 friends, we decided to go to Israel by walk. No shoes, no food, just we believe by God. But our plan was to go from our village to Sudan, from Sudan to come to Egypt, from Egypt to come to the Sinai Desert, from Sinai Desert to come to Beersheba, Jerusalem. We took a guide, Christian, to show us how to walk from our village to Sudan. We paid to him $2. $2, it's a lot of money. And my father, he sold a cow to give me these $2. He paid, and we started to walk day and night. And during our journey, no rest. We saw tigers and lions and snakes. We captured by robbers in the jungle. They just gave us to stand only by our underwear. They gave us our clothes back, no money, nothing, and we continued our journey. We came in the desert between Ethiopia and Sudan. In that place, it was so hard because there is no water. But we continued to walk, and we pray Shema Israel. We came inside Sudan. We walked 780 kilometers in a week. And then when we crossed the Sudanic border, the Sudanese, they shoot and they kill my best friend. And they tie our legs and our hands. They put us in jail, tortured by them. They said, why do you come here? We said, we are already refugees. We are trying to get food here. We cannot claim we are a Jew. After 91 days, we get our freedom. And they took us by trucks to the big refugee camp in Gedarif. We waited there and we met a white person. That was my second time to saw. And he came and he said, okay, I know you. I know your group. I know where you come from, what village you come from. I know your goals. And he said, I will be back tonight. You have to stay here. And they collected all the group and started to drive through the desert. No roads. And then after 5 hours drive, we came in the North Sudan, in the place that called Kassala Desert. They announced, it should be here very noisy and dusty, and please don't be afraid. In that moment, airplane also landing. And they open the door, and they push us to come in. The whole issue is 4 minutes. They closed the plane, and they said, Havenu Shalom Aleichem. In the 4th February 1984, we landed to the Promised Land, Israel. My father, all my 9 brothers and 2 sisters, they didn't know I am alive for 7 years until Operation Shalom. It was very difficult to be here, to start the life here from zero. The cultural shock is so strong. 400 years, gap in 4 hours flight. When they brought us in the absorption center in Tzfat, a woman who is assisting us gave us to go to the elevator. And then she pressed the number, floor number 4, and she gone back to bring another group. We didn't know how to go. The elevator is gone and coming and gone and coming for half hour. When she come back, we are still inside the elevator. Being Jew in Ethiopia is, to live in the special life. Sometimes when Western people, they don't understand how people, they can live in a village. There is no electricity, there is no bank, there is no supermarket. And the people, they live a very quiet, wonderful life. There are some people, they think the Ethiopians, black Africans came in Israel because of the hunger in Ethiopia. That we came here by Zionism ideology, because Israel is our homeland. We came to build the Israeli society. The opening the door of this country for each individuals all over the world, that's the great thing that we brought in this century.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
Have you ever wondered what happened to the lost 10 tribes of Israel? This is a question that has challenged Bible scholars and historians for centuries. Now, the Bible does tell us that as the Assyrian Empire came against the northern 10 tribes some 2,700 years ago, that there were members of the northern tribes who heeded the warnings of the prophets, and they fled south to Jerusalem and to the kingdom of Judea. Others who were taken into exile came back with Ezra and Nehemiah and rejoined the Jewish mainstream. And so we can say with confidence that the Jewish people we have with us today contain significant remnants of all 12 tribes. Yet there were many from the northern 10 tribes who were indeed lost to history, and the search for them goes on to this day. Now, the body that has the final say in determining who truly has Jewish ancestry are the chief rabbis of Israel, who sit here in the great synagogue in Jerusalem.
In the late 1970s, a few individuals from a small group located in northeast India began to research the origins of their religious traditions and their ancestry. Their research led them to discover an ancestral connection to Israel. Under Persian rule, their ancestors traveled through the Silk Route to modern-day Afghanistan, Tibet, China, and finally to northeast India, in the midst of Myanmar and Bangladesh. This particular group, called the Bnei Menashe, or Sons of Menashe, are believed to be descendants from the lost tribe of Manasseh. In the early 1980s, members of the group made contact with an organization in Israel expressing an interest in returning to their ancient homeland.
The chief rabbis have gone and investigated these people. They found that they still observe Shabbat. They still keep the kosher dietary laws. They still celebrate the biblical feasts. They still marry only within their tribe. And they still cling to the hope of returning one day to the land of Israel. Where does this hope come from? Well, the same Hebrew prophets who warned the ancient Israelites of the coming exile also left them with the hope of return. The prophet Isaiah, for instance, in chapter 43, says, "Fear not, for I am with you, and I will bring your descendants from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. I will bring your sons from afar, and your daughters from the ends of the earth." So when the prophet said, "I'll bring your descendants from the east," the B'nai Menashe clung to this hope for centuries, and the chief rabbis have now officially recognized them as having Israelite descent and approved their return to the land of Israel, and this is a modern-day miracle.
Many B'nai Menashe have already settled in Israel, and more are expected to come in September of 2012. The International Christian Embassy has pledged to sponsor the first flight of this new wave of Aliyah from India and hopes to sponsor more flights in the future.
The return of the Bnei Menashe, the sons of Menashe, to the land of Israel is one of the most exciting developments of our days. This is exactly what the Bible speaks about in Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 3, where God says He will bring back from captivity the sons of Israel, the house of Judah, back to their land to possess it. And we want to invite you to become part of this exciting end-time prophetic action of God and to place a financial seed into God's return of the chosen people to the land of Israel. Become a partner of the Christian Embassy and help us to bring the Bnei Menashe, the sons of Menashe, back to the land of Israel. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you out of Zion.
That's all for this week's edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.